When a rising Hollywood star starts burning bridges faster than she can build them, something's going to give. She was supposed to be the new face of a generation, talented, bold, unafraid to challenge tradition. But now, she's at the center of a storm that's shaking one of the most prestigious theaters in the world. Ticket sales are crashing, directors are holding secret meetings, and backstage whispers suggest that what's happening behind the curtain might be more dramatic than anything on stage. So, how did Rachel Zegler go from Disney darling to the biggest liability on London's West End? Let's start where the downfall began. It was meant to be her breakout moment, a timeless fairy tale reimagined for a modern audience, with Rachel Zegler front and center as Snow White. But instead of enchanting fans, she alienated them fast. In interview after interview, Zegler dismissed the original Disney film. She called the prince a stalker, joked about the concept of love at first sight, and said the story needed to be rewritten entirely. She wasn't just offering a fresh perspective, she was tearing down a beloved classic, and the internet did not forgive her for it. Clips of her comments went viral for all the wrong reasons. TikTok turned her into a meme, influencers roasted her tone, and Disney fans, across generations, started asking the same question. Why was she even cast in the first place? By the time Snow White hit theaters, the damage was already done. Despite a reported budget nearing $170 million, the film flopped, earning less than $50 million in its opening and earning one of the lowest IMDb ratings of any live-action remake. Reviewers slammed the film as confused, generic, and socially overstuffed. The replacement of the classic Seven Dwarfs with magical beings was especially controversial, with disability advocates calling it erasure rather than inclusion. But even as the film spiraled, one name kept coming up in every headline: Rachel Zegler. And just when most actors would have taken a step back, maybe let things cool off, she took on the role of Eva Perón. If there's one role in musical theater that commands respect, it's Eva Perón in Evita. She's not just a character, she's an icon, and playing her takes more than a good voice or a big name. It demands range, maturity, and charisma powerful enough to hold a stage like the London Palladium. So when director Jamie Lloyd, known for his raw, stripped-down revivals, announced that Rachel Zegler would lead his new production of Evita, the internet didn't just react, it erupted. While a small wave of her fans applauded the bold move, the dominant reaction was outrage. Traditional theatergoers were livid, critics were skeptical, and even industry insiders began whispering, was this about talent or just buzz? Because Evita isn't just any musical, it's sacred ground for many in the theater world. And to hand it to someone whose last major role was defined by viral backlash, that felt less like reinvention and more like a publicity stunt. But that was only the beginning, because what started as casting criticism would soon turn into something much messier: offstage tension, empty seats, and backstage drama no one could ignore. And what came next? Let's just say the spotlight started to burn. Theater fans expected headlines when Evita returned to the London Palladium. What they didn't expect were entire rows of empty seats just weeks before opening night. Ticket sales weren't just slow, they were alarming. For a Jamie Lloyd production at a venue this iconic, unsold premium seats and vacant weekend performances are practically unheard of. But insiders began sounding the alarm. The audience wasn't staying away because of the music, or the venue, or the staging. They were staying away because of her. The term Zegler effect started making the rounds. On blogs, on Twitter, even in ticket offices, producers scrambled. They introduced promo codes, early discounts, last-minute bundles, anything to move tickets. But nothing seemed to work. Why? Because the problem wasn't the price. It was the perception. To the public, Zegler's name no longer meant breakout star. It meant baggage, controversy, a walking PR crisis. And just when things couldn't get more uncertain, the real drama began. While the box office floundered on the outside, things were falling apart behind the scenes. Multiple sources began leaking scaring details from inside the rehearsal room, and what they described was far from professional. Zegler allegedly showed up late, often. She openly questioned Jamie Lloyd's direction, even in front of the full cast. And in one reported incident, she walked off set after a disagreement over scene blocking. Instead of a collaborative process, rehearsals turned tense, awkward, combative. Some cast members accused her of monopolizing stage time, refusing to harmonize unless the spotlight was solely on her, and going off script during key numbers. What was supposed to be a revival of a legendary musical had turned into a behind-the-scenes power struggle. Eventually, it escalated. Sources claim Lloyd held a closed-door meeting with producers and legal teams. Her contract? Reportedly under review. And yes, a replacement was being quietly considered. For a show set to open in just a few weeks, that kind of uncertainty isn't just inconvenient, it's dangerous. Zegler was supposed to headline the production. Now, she was being labeled a liability. But if Lloyd was losing faith in his leading lady, why did she still have the role? We're about to get into that, because this story isn't just about bad behavior. It's about how far the industry will go to protect a star, even when the audience is no longer watching. By this point, what started as casting backlash had escalated into a full-blown crisis. Theater insiders, usually tight-lipped about backstage issues, began whispering about crisis meetings between Jamie Lloyd, producers, and legal advisors. Something was clearly happening behind closed doors, and it didn't sound good for Zegler. Reports suggest that her contract was officially placed under legal review. That's not speculation. It's what multiple sources from inside the London theater scene were quietly confirming. Why? Because things had apparently hit a tipping point. Late arrivals to rehearsal had become habitual. Creative disagreements weren't being resolved, they were being amplified. And Zegler's alleged refusal to follow direction wasn't just seen as unprofessional, it was now being called a threat to the production. And here's the kicker. A replacement actress was being scouted, quietly, of course, and discreetly through back channels. But the search was reportedly underway. If true, that means the producers were preparing for the worst-case scenario, having to recast the lead just weeks before opening night. Let's pause here for a second and acknowledge the gravity of that. This isn't a small community theater gig. This is the London Palladium. Theater royalty has walked this stage. Evita is a massive investment, financially and artistically. And yet, behind the scenes, the team was already preparing for the possibility that their star might not make it to opening night. This raised a huge question. Why keep going? Why not just pull the plug now and start fresh? The answer is complicated, but it mostly comes down to reputation, contracts, and cold, hard cash. See, if the producers were to fire Zegler, they wouldn't just be losing a performer. They'd risk lawsuits, bad press, and possibly losing promotional funding tied to her name. On the other hand, if they stuck it out and let her stay, they risked empty theaters, scathing reviews, and permanent damage to Jamie Lloyd's reputation. So what do you do when your lead actress might tank your show, but firing her could tank your budget? You stall, you wait, you play the PR game. And that's exactly what seems to be happening. Lloyd has reportedly been distancing himself from Zegler in public, choosing his words carefully, avoiding her in post-rehearsal interviews. Meanwhile, behind the curtain, contingency plans are stacking up. Make no mistake, this wasn't just a creative disagreement. This was shaping up to be one of the most controversial pre-opening disasters in recent West End history. And yet, in the middle of all this chaos, one question kept coming back. How is Rachel Zegler still getting roles? Let's talk about that. If there's one thing Rachel Zegler's critics can't seem to understand, it's this. How does someone with this much backlash keep landing top-tier roles? Let's take a step back. She alienated Disney's core audience, publicly trashed a beloved classic, starred in one of the biggest flops in live-action remake history, and now she's allegedly turning rehearsals into fights in one of the most high-profile productions on the West End. Yet somehow, she keeps getting the call, the cast list, the headline, the spotlight. To some, that's resilience. To others, it's privilege disguised as potential. There's a growing theory, especially among theater fans and YouTube commentators, that Zegler isn't succeeding because of her talent, but because of what she represents. She fits a marketing profile: young, ethnically diverse, bold in interviews, outspoken online. She's the type of celebrity that entertainment executives believe can appeal to Gen Z audiences, regardless of actual performance or fan reception. And in today's industry, where controversy equals clicks, Zegler's drama-filled narrative keeps her name trending, even if it's for all the wrong reasons. Here's how the game works. Negative headlines equal online engagement. Online engagement equal algorithmic visibility. Visibility equals perceived relevance, and perceived relevance equals casting opportunities. It's a basic formula, but it works. Studios and producers chase attention, even if that attention is controlling. And Zegler? She's riding that wave, knowingly or not. Her social media strategy has shifted dramatically. Where she once posted confidently, even smugly about her projects, now her tone is far more defensive. Long captions about her love for Evita, paragraphs explaining her creative process, teary-eyed TikToks where she addresses the hate. But here's the problem. Audiences can smell damage control. And when it feels like someone is trying to manage a crisis instead of owning their mistakes, the public doesn't get more sympathetic. They get more suspicious. Even her defenders, yes, she still has them, are starting to waver. Many argue that the backlash to Snow White was overblown, that her words were taken out of context. But those same people now admit that the reports from Evita Rehearsals are harder to excuse. If even half the allegations are true, then what we're seeing isn't just bad luck or internet roasting. It's a pattern. And here's the harsh truth. At some point, no amount of talent or PR can outweigh that. So, as the curtains prepare to rise at the London Palladium, one question is hanging heavy in the air. Is this Zegler's comeback moment, or the final unraveling of a star that burned too hot, too fast, and way too recklessly? This isn't just a Rachel Zegler story anymore. It's a reflection of something much bigger, a spotlight turned back on Hollywood and theater's power players, exposing a growing disconnect between the people calling the shots and the people buying the tickets. Because while audiences are voicing frustration louder than ever on Twitter, Reddit, TikTok, and in ticket offices, it seems like decision makers aren't listening. And here's the core issue. Is the entertainment industry out of touch with its own audience? Zegler's continued rise, despite repeated controversies, has become a case study in what happens when visibility gets mistaken for value. Yes, she trends. Yes, she gets attention. But attention doesn't equal approval. Producers, directors, and studio heads are operating under the illusion that all press is good press. But in the theater world, where reputation, tradition, and word of mouth still matter, that formula doesn't always hold. Jamie Lloyd, a a director known for bold risks, is now watching his vision for Evita teeter on the edge of collapse, and the very casting decision that was supposed to modernize the show might end up destroying it. He's stuck in a brutal double bind. Stand by Zegler and risk opening to half-empty houses, bitter reviews, and long-term damage to his legacy. Or remove her and admit publicly that this bold bet backfired. Neither choice is simple. Both come with fallout. But what's most surprising isn't the mess itself. It's how predictable it all feels. You don't need industry access to see this coming. Audiences called it from day one. She's not the right fit. This will blow up. Why is she even cast? It's a moment of reckoning for casting directors and production heads everywhere. Because if ticket sales, fan sentiment, and critical reception all clash with your casting decisions, what are you really prioritizing? Are you building art or building buzz? And when a performer's reputation starts to overshadow the story itself, what happens to the work? What happens to the people behind the scenes, the crew, the writers, the understudies, the co-stars, all caught in the wake of one headline-grabbing lead? It's not just about Zegler. It's about a system that keeps pushing controversy, even when the audience has clearly said, "We've had enough." And now, as Evita nears opening night, all eyes are locked on London. Not to see a show, but to watch what feels like a slow-motion implosion. So the question isn't just, will Rachel Zegler deliver? It's, will the industry learn anything if she doesn't? June 2025. The curtains rise at the London Palladium. Spotlights hit the stage. And whether it's Rachel Zegler in costume or a last-minute replacement, the entire world will be watching. But not because of Evita, because of everything that's happened around it. In a way, this production has already made history, not for its music, its staging, or its message, but for the drama unfolding behind the scenes. It's a modern cautionary tale of casting decisions driven by buzz, not belief, of rising stars who fly too close to the flame, of audiences who are no longer willing to separate the performer from the performance. Rachel Zegler's story might still change. She might step on stage and stun the critics. She might win over the crowd. She might turn this mess into the ultimate comeback. Or it might be the final chapter in a career defined more by controversy than craft. What's clear is this: the entertainment industry is at a turning point. And this time, the audience holds the power. Because the real spotlight, it isn't on the stage, it's on the decisions being made behind it. So, the next time you see a casting headline that makes you think, wait, seriously? Just remember what happened here. The applause isn't guaranteed, and the spotlight, it always comes at a price.